Javian Osborne. Obviously, with Tashard Choice, again, mentioning him because it was a big deal. It's probably the biggest loss of the staff. It might be you might be able to argue it's the biggest loss of the Steve Sarkisian era to lose him, which is saying a lot because we've lost a lot of good coaches. But as soon as he heard that, he canceled his Texas visit. He no longer has it scheduled. I think Michigan is the clear leader right there. What do you think of Javian Osborne, and do you think is a priority to try to get back on board?
I mean, what do I think of him? I think he's an elite kid. There's very few kinds of running backs that could start for 4 years at the 5A level, right? And Javian Osborne is one of those kids, right? He is able to. He's an every down back. He's a guy who can do it all. There's no praise high enough for what I think about Javian Osborne as a prospect, right? But I also think fans need to temper themselves as like he was a Tashard Choice kid. It just is what it is, right? And that's why the tea leaves started shifting the other way when Tashard Choice left, because Javian Osborne, I think, was a Tashard Choice kid. And the thing that like is a big red flag for me is that Texas has already gotten KJ Edwards back on the schedule, but Osborne isn't, right? And so I don't know why or how the breakdown has happened, but Edwards is there, and Edwards is really good out of Carthage, right? I love him. He's great. So I don't know if they're going to be able to get Osborne back off of his schedule, because that is, to me, something that, when a coach like Tashard Choice, who is top 1% of recruiters in the country, right? That's part of the big reason why losing guys like that is so devastating, is because you lose these relationships. We talked about Tyler Atkinson, right? Just a second ago. It was a Tashard Choice kid. So again, Javian Osborne, would love to have him on campus. I'm just not super hopeful that is going to happen because his relationship with Tashard Choice was so deep.
No, I agree with that. And I also think you brought up a really good point. He may not be Chad Scott's flavor. Like, he's a good player, but he may just not be the guy that Chad Scott wants. He may have watched other tape and been like, hey, I want this guy. But he did reach out. He has reportedly reached out twice, talked to him. So there is an open line of communication there, which is good. But yeah, they've kind of locked in on KJ Edwards, Xavier Crowell. They brought up into the fold a little bit more. He's supposed to visit as well. We mentioned that last week, so go check out that video. He's from Alabama. KJ Edwards, like you said, from Carthage, which is Texas. Javian Osborne is an in-state kid, so that does hurt a little bit. But if you can replace him with another in-state kid like KJ Edwards, that's a really good thing.
Yep.
Like I said, I like Javian Osborne, but do I think he's not Tyler Atkinson to me? Like I said, I think Tyler Atkinson would be a gigantic get for Texas. I like Javian Osborne, but I think there's like 3 or 4 other prospects I throw into the same mold with him. We just mentioned 2 of them. So would it suck not to get him? Yeah, it would. Absolutely. But again, there's other guys in this class that I like. He has really good acceleration. That's one thing I noticed. He's not a burner. He's not Jaden Blue where that top end speed is crazy, but he gets to his top end speed really quickly. I think that's more of like a Jonathan Brooks thing. Jonathan Brooks was not fast, but he got to his top end speed very, very quickly. He's also a pretty good pass catcher, but he's not asked to be a big pass catcher, which, hey, in Sark's offense, Sark does like to use his running backs out of the backfield. Yeah. We saw that with Jaden Blue. We used him a lot out of the backfield this year. So that would definitely help. But overall, I think he's a really good player. I just don't see it in the cards right now, which no hate to him. We may have to circle back, though. Like, recruiting's not perfect. KJ Edwards could decide to go somewhere else, or Xavier Crowell could decide to go somewhere else, and then guess what? We're kind of screwed. And guess what? We may go back to Javian Osborne and really put on the full court press and go after him really hard because we kind of need to.
Yeah, and I think this is, again, this is March 3rd when we're doing this, and these kids aren't signing for 7 months or 8 months, 9 months. 9 months, actually, really when it's going to happen, right? So, like, there's a lot of time to sweat this out. I think we've got to be patient, right? This is what recruiting with the big boys is, right? Sometimes coaches leave and you lose out on a player that was one of his guys. This is just part and parcel of being the elite of the elite. If you want to sign number 1 classes, back-to-back top 3 classes, this is the kind of stuff you have to deal with, where Javian Osborne's a kid who has multiple suitors all over the country. I think it was like 50 or 60 offers when it looked like everybody wants this kid. And recruiting is a relationship business. It just is what it is. And so if the guy he has a relationship with dips, it's something that you've got to deal with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he talked about that like a week before Tashard Choice left, of like, they're the favorite right now because he's my best relationship. Michigan was a second place finisher at that moment, and then he's left. And then as soon as that happened, he canceled his visit and was like, Michigan's my number 1 right now. So I can't blame the kid for that. I mean, I respect that way more than someone's like, you know what, they offered me the most money, so I went there. Has nothing to do with the relationships. Like if that's your best relationship, I respect that. So I would love to have him, like I said, but it may not be in the cards. And I think, like you said, people need to chill out because of the time of year. One thing, and then two, not Tashard Choice and Chad Scott aren't the same people. They're not going to like the same running backs. And if that guy has a guy that he likes more off of the tape he's seen, then I want him to go recruit the guy that he wants, because guess what? He's the running back coach, and it's not up to me. I want him to recruit the guy that he wants. Like, hey, this is my number one guy. This guy, actually, Javian Osborne, was like my fourth or fifth guy. So let me go after my number one. Then if I can't get him, let me go get my number two, then my number three, number four, number five, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to hate on Chad Scott for that. I think it's really smart of him to reach out once in a while just to kind of, get feelers out there. And like I said, recruiting is a long game. This isn't like the Mac Brown era where he would have recruiting basically wrapped up by April, May, and then just have everyone signed. Steve Sarkisian's pulling rabbits out of the hat late in the cycle.
And that's what it is. That's what recruiting is nationally now, right? Texas fans, this is, like you said, it's not going to be a Mac Brown, we're done by August and we're going to focus on the season kind of class. Now there will be guys like, I think KJ Edwards is set to decide in August, right? So we'll know on some of these guys before the season, but we have to just ride it out because this is the biggest decision these young men will have made in their entire lives. And, the big boys, the big recruiting, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Oregon, all of those schools, all these SEC, Florida, LSU, they're pushing for all of these same guys, and they're all going to be recruiting them until the ink is dry. So we just have to be okay with this uncertainty that we have to deal with because we follow recruiting.
100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. This is the 42nd edition of Texas Longhorns Live.